Is Starfield already a failure? No, of course not, in the same way that it isn't already a success. And yet, there are people out there pretending that the game's already succeeded or failed based upon their allegiance to a plastic box. Right now, I would say there are three distinct groups voicing their opinions on Starfield, with the first one, of course, being the PlayStation fanboys who are gonna hate on the game regardless because it's exclusive to Xbox.
This is where
Starfield.
If I had one!
Then there are the Xbox fanboys who are going to love this game regardless and are going to pretend that this game is the greatest thing of all time because it's an Xbox exclusive, no other reason. And then there is the last and final group, the rest of the gaming community who are looking at Starfield as they look at any other game, somewhat critically, maybe a bit optimistic, maybe a bit pessimistic, which, you know, they should be. It is a Bethesda game and the last couple Bethesda games haven't been very good. Now, you might be wondering why I went out of my way in the intro of this video to explain to you the different groups voicing their opinions on Starfield. Now, the reason for that is that I want to make 100% clear to everybody watching this video that I am in the last group of people. I do not think Starfield is a failure yet. I do not believe Starfield is a success yet. So please, if you disagree with me, don't just go to the comment section and tell me that I'm just an Xbox fanboy or that I'm just a PlayStation fanboy and I'm nitpicking and biased and therefore my opinion doesn't count. I don't own either an Xbox or a PlayStation, okay? So if you disagree, you can tell me why you think I am wrong in the comments. And maybe you'll change my mind. I don't fucking know. Starfield's world design is, from what I've seen, the part of the game that's being criticized probably the most, with mainly a lot of PlayStation fanboys making fun of the fact that the game only has 4 cities, while also claiming to have 1,000 planets.
I mean, out of 1,000 planets that they said you're gonna be able to explore, you're only gonna have 4 cities.
Now, I don't really know where to start here, either with the criticism that the game only has 4 cities, or with the fact that the game is supposedly gonna have 1,000 planets. So let's just start with the fact that the game only has 4 major cities. Bethesda has announced that this game has the most handcrafted content of any game they've ever made, and that the city of New Atlantis is the biggest city they've ever made in a video game. The main reason why I don't think that the game only having 4 major cities is a problem is because 4 major cities sounds like it's gonna be more than enough. Not only because these cities are apparently extremely large and will have a lot of content in them, but think back to any RPG you've ever played, right? How many cities are there? Like really, in most RPGs there are like a dozen villages and maybe 1 or 2 major cities. Starfield has 4. Starfield has 4 major cities, which by the way doesn't mean there aren't gonna be any villages or outposts or space stations, and we've seen space stations in the trailer. It only means there are going to be 4 major big city locations, and that is not a problem, especially when you consider that the story of this game is focused on the main character exploring parts of the galaxy that have not yet been explored, so it wouldn't really make sense for there to be big cities out there. These 4 cities will probably be more than enough for the game, and you might be sitting there listening to me right now thinking to yourself, but Atomics, most of the other RPGs I've played that only have like 1 or 2 cities are far smaller than Starfield. Starfield is going to have 1,000 planets. 4 cities seems like a very small amount. And to that I have to say is that I don't believe that there are going to be 1,000 planets in Starfield. I find the sentence 1,000 planets open for you to explore very reminiscent of the fact that Fallout 3 was going to have 300 endings, or Fallout 76 was gonna have 16 times the detail. I believe 1,000 planets is another famous Todd Howard lie. The game will probably have a couple hundred planets, max. But that doesn't mean that there is not gonna be anything on those planets. And again, just because there aren't going to be any major handcrafted big cities on those planets, it doesn't mean that there won't be villages or outposts on those planets. Unfortunately, it does mean that those outposts and villages will probably be procedurally generated, but that problem kind of falls more into the next category of the video. Now obviously the question of if this game's going to be a real RPG or not is very relevant, seeing as the past couple Bethesda games haven't really been RPGs, you know, like Fallout 4 wasn't really an RPG, Skyrim wasn't really an RPG. But before I get into the RPG mechanics that have already been shown or been told to us are gonna be in the game, I just quickly want to touch back on the procedurally generated villages and outposts, if those are gonna be in the game, which it would be really weird to me if they weren't. The quests in those villages and outposts would also have to be procedurally generated. Actually, you know, if there are going to be quests in the procedurally generated solar systems and on those planets, the quests also have to be procedurally generated. Which means that the quests can't have like an interesting story with interesting characters because it's written by a computer. Which means that like almost all of them will be boring fetch quests where you essentially just have to go to some dumb dungeon to get a thing and then bring it back to the NPC that gave you the quest. These quests are also in Skyrim, these procedurally generated quests, and they're the most boring part of the entire fucking game. So I kind of fear that the majority of side quests in this game will be boring procedurally generated fetch quests. Anyway, most of what we've like really seen so far of RPG mechanics have been alright. The background you have to choose and the skills mechanics, they look pretty cool. You know, they look like they're gonna be a huge improvement over the perk system from Fallout 4, which was just absolute garbage. And it also looks from the trailer that there's unique dialogue, at least in the beginning of the game, based upon which background you choose, which is again something that Fallout 4 didn't have, but older RPGs like New Vegas did. The trades mechanic, however, looks incredibly cool. It's basically the same thing as Fallout 1 and 2 have. I'm pretty sure it's not in the other Fallout games. But essentially it's you pick a trait that has both positive and negative effects on your character for the rest of the game. It's a really cool mechanic, especially since it's optional, so if you don't want like any, you know, debuffs to your character, you don't have to pick it. Now I believe that the most important thing in an RPG is the dialogue and the dialogue system. Now we haven't seen any footage of the dialogue system yet, but from the information we've gotten from Bethesda, the main character will not be voiced, which hopefully means that we're gonna get a dialogue system similar to the older RPGs like Morrowind, New Vegas, Fallout 3, etc. And not the fucking shitty Fallout 4 Mass Effect ripoff dialogue system, because that was just fucking awful. That just Fallout 4 in general fucking sucks, okay? And before I get another person in my comment section saying shit like, oh, Fallout 4 is actually great, I think you misspoke and meant Fallout 76. No, I meant Fallout 4. The game's fucking garbage, okay? The only thing that I would say is equally important, or probably more important than the dialogue system, is probably the main quest and the story. And we did get quite a lot of, you know, story in the trailer, but I don't really have any opinions on it. It sounds kind of basic, and I don't really understand how it would unfold into like a bigger RPG story. But I guess we'll see. I don't know, it doesn't sound like a bad story. We don't know too much about it, so I can't really comment on it. Starfield's gameplay. Let's start with the shooting, because that's probably the most obvious one. The gunplay looks better than Fallout 4. It doesn't look amazing or that special, but it looks better than Fallout 4's. That's good. The first thing I noticed though when watching the trailer is that enemies barely fucking react to getting shot. Just the health bar just goes down and then they die, which I don't like. They don't really react to it. They don't really, you know, it doesn't look like they actually get affected by getting shot. Their health bar just goes down. Then there is the resource gathering and base building. Resource gathering works in the same way a lot of other games have it. You just shoot a laser beam at some shit, the shit breaks, and then you get the resources. Now the base building, we have seen somewhat how it works, but not really what you can do with it. It tells you can recruit characters to work at the base for you, but it doesn't... The trailer never told us what you can do at the base. Do they research something? Do they produce something that you can then sell? Like, I don't know, it doesn't really show how deep that goes, so I don't really know about it. Base building is something that I would definitely love to do in a game like Starfield, but as long as I don't know why I should build a base, you know, if it's like Fallout 4 with the settlement mechanic, which was, you know, awful. It was like build a settlement and you get very minimal rewards for it. But if it's something like in Kenshi, for example, in Kenshi you can actually build a base where you can like produce drugs and then sell the drugs. Like shit like that is pretty cool to do on the side. So I'm not saying I want to like sell drugs in Starfield, but you know, basically something like that would be cool. But seeing as this is Bethesda, I'm leaning more towards the base building being a bit shallow and boring, because every single game of Bethesda that has base building in it, the base building isn't very good. Last but not least of gameplay is the spaceship. The spaceship has caused a lot of controversy for very good reason. You cannot fly your spaceship over the planet, and there is no seamless transition with you entering the atmosphere of a planet, like there is in No Man's Sky, for example. In Starfield, you will just be getting into your spaceship, a cutscene will play, probably, and then you'll just be out in space, and when you want to, you know, enter a planet, you'll have to just select like a waypoint somewhere on the planet, and your spaceship will land there. It's pretty boring, it's not that great. Will it ruin the entire game? No, and I don't understand why a lot of people are pretending like that would just destroy the entire game. No. Would it ruin immersion? Sure. Does it suck that it isn't there? Yeah, it should have definitely been there. Will it ruin the entire game? No. Anyway, boys, that's all my thoughts on Starfield. This video is probably a bit late. I'm pretty sure everybody's already covered their own opinions on this game. But anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.